Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Film Seizure. Today, we bring to you a journey on our Trekation to the planet Nimbus 3. And what's the name of the city there, Jeff? It's like the Intergalactic City of Peace or something, or Planet of Peace.
The Planet of Peace. I don't know. This is Star Trek 5.
This is Star Trek 5. I'm Jason Oliver.
I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I think we lost Chuck Moore.
I'm Chuck Moore. I'm here.
There he is.
And we have again our guest,
our fellow Trekker,
our guest Trekker. Yeah, for this Trek vacation that we're on. Trekation. Trekation just rolls right off the tongue.
Does it?
Ken Shuttleworth. Say hello, Ken.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Ken. Welcome back on this
Ken's real
journey
excited to talk about Star Trek 5.
Can you feel the enthusiasm in my voice?
I can smell what the Shuttleworth is cooking.
I almost requested to be beaten down for this shit. So.
I have a feeling people are going to find a reason to talk about 4 again during this podcast.
Well, we'll see here. We'll see. I will say this is yet another one of our quarantine sessions. Although right now I don't know what we're quarantining most from. In the real world, things are kind of crazy outside some people's windows. So whether it's virus or unrest, we are recording over Skype for safety's sake and for us to beat down this terrible, terrible God plague that has come from the center of the galaxy.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
So Nimbus 3, the planet of whatever, the planet of happy, fun time, good feels. Where do we start with this?
I think we start with why this movie got made.
Okay, well, I do have some behind-the-scenes stuff that I can share.
I find the production of this movie particularly interesting, far more interesting than the movie itself.
Yes, and maybe that's where most of our conversation is, because the movie itself is bad. It's not my least favorite Star Trek movie, though. It's just bad. All right. So
as I was saying before we got on, the Star Trek 5 feels like a second-rate original series episode, but with a bigger budget.
Yeah, it's the third season episode that stuck around somehow and got expanded upon in all the wrong places.
Yeah, and the cheesiness factor is high.
Yeah, there are some really, really bad episodes of Star Trek, the original series, that are better than this movie.
Yes.
So Star Trek 4 is a massive, massive hit. And I see we've already started talking about Star Trek 4. Remember Star Trek 4, guys? When Scotty said, "Captain, there be whales here." Remember that? That was fun.
Those were good times.
Fucking whales.
Yeah.
It's still not happy about the whales.
No, he's not. He's not. That's okay, though. He's happier about the whales than he is about God. So Shatner kind of gets the idea, or is kind of given the go-ahead to get to direct Star Trek 5 and get to have a heavy presence in the story element of Star Trek 5 as well. This is kind of rolling off of Leonard Nimoy being in the director's chair for 3 and 4. I do find it interesting that some of the stories that were told, particularly from like George Takei, where he was like, we had our personal issues, but he's actually a really, really, really great director to work with. That's hilarious to me, because it's like you would think that everything would be turned up to like 4,000 on Shatner's ego and everything when he's in the director's chair, but apparently nobody had anything negative to say about how he managed the crew. Like all of the stress that the studio can put onto a director, he said, almost everybody said he never let that get to the actors.
He was probably like a substitute that let the kids do whatever they want. That's why they liked him.
Probably, but I guess he was really good.
Too. I mean, he's working with people he's worked with for a long time.
Right.
You know, I mean, how much direction do they really need? He's probably a lot of his energy is probably consumed with, you know, getting the money for the effects that he wants and the shots that he wants. You know, I mean, that's the actors are probably the least of his concern.
Right. So he's, you know, like he's but he was very good at shielding any of the typical big budget production stresses from the people who don't need that stress. So yes, I mean, supposedly the stories were really, really good, but so he starts kind of thinking about what he wants to tell in his story, and
I think we first, before we get into that, we have to mention the fact that the reason Shatner is even in the director's chair is because he basically demanded it, because he is contractually whatever Nimoy gets, he gets, and vice versa in their contracts. So Nimoy had just directed 2 in a row. Shatner was like, well, it's my fucking turn, and I got this crazy script idea, and we're doing this movie.
Right. So and so he gets really, really, really obsessed. And man, I get it. I can fall down rabbit holes on YouTube all fucking day. So I get it, man. I get where he gets obsessed with the idea of televangelists. And he is watching this go from being, you know, like the farting preacher guy, like just talking to a camera, to seeing the people like Jim Baker and what was the other guy, Swaggart, talking to like mega church size auditoriums of people, and seeing people so easily swayed by these, what he thinks are just absolute charlatans.
Right.
Like there's nothing about these people that he thinks is at all credible.
Right.
And he doesn't even think any of them are religious in the least. That they're just all making money off of, you know, they're getting what they want and they're selling snake oil, essentially. So he kind of comes up with this idea that, like, okay, so let's have this situation where somebody claims that they are either a fake god or in direct connection to a guy who is a fake god, and basically use that to kind of build a groundswell within the Federation of several, you know, of all these several planets, that this person is for real. And they start, in a way, kind of like what some of the original Khan ideas are. They start to create kind of an opposition to the more realistic type stuff. Yeah, so basically he's writing a movie about YouTube 30 years early. So he is, so he takes this idea, and Paramount immediately was like, we can't tell this story. There's no way we can tell anything that has religion in it. And what's really funny is Gene Roddenberry constantly was thumbing his nose at religion through Star Trek. And he really, really, really wanted Star Trek the Motion Picture to be about Seizure being the god that gave birth to all religion and everything. And Paramount was like, nope, we can't do that. We can't have that story because, you know, this is 1979. Are you kidding me? We're about to go into the 80s where everybody's going to pretend to be real pious and shit. And like, even Roddenberry was like, no, Shatner, we can't tell this story. You can't do this religion story. It's not Star Trek or whatever he probably said. Well, Nimoy and DeForest Kelley and Harve Bennett hated the idea that Spock and McCoy would turn on Kirk for the majority of the movie, where basically William Shatner's story was it's Kirk against everybody, and that only Kirk is right.
Yeah, you get a lot of these little ego moments in the movie itself, where you could say, "Oh my God, yeah, he is taking this Kirk character to to these unbelievably narcissistic levels.
Well, in the novels, Kirk ended up defeating the Borg, right? Because they resurrected Kirk, assimilated him, because a guy who's 100 years out of his time would be the perfect, mechanism to defeat the current state.
There's a moment in 5 where the Klingon general or warrior or whatever captain calls Kirk the greatest warrior in the galaxy.
Which is funny because in 6 they do that so much better.
Yes.
Stick around. Next week we've got a good movie to talk about. But anyway, so basically his story was Kirk is basically overwhelmed by the followers of an evangelical Vulcan who ultimately takes over the Enterprise. Then Kirk would then confront this God thing, and it would reveal itself to be Satan.
That's not literal or anything.
Right. And that is Paramount's like, nope. And so Harv Bennett stepped in and said, okay, let's disseminate what you have here, and let's take a look at what could potentially work. The idea of a evangelist is actually a decent idea. It does speak to some of that human nature that Star Trek is always about, right? Like, humans can be better if they can get beyond this bullshit that they do or whatever. So I like that idea. I love the idea of a poorly functioning Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
They do nothing with that's worth a shit.
Nope.
I love the idea of a movie where seemingly the characters are together, but then are forced apart. There's ideas here that you can totally play with, but just none of it really works all that well.
I even like the idea that there's this powerful being that is being contained in the universe by this, nebulous or whatever the hell that
the barrier,
the Great
Reef.
Barrier, the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah, that has been there probably for maybe thousands of years, that nobody really understands what this thing is, right? And that it's a very powerful being, not God, but very powerful, and has been imprisoned there essentially. I think that's a cool idea as well.
One other thing, the Cybot character kind of legitimizes religion within the Vulcan race too, because he said thousands of years ago they believed this stuff, and that's approximately how long they said they hadn't practiced it or hadn't tried anything religious when in the search for Spock.
Yeah, but you know what though? They still had the temple. They still had the lady who is and then they have like the altar.
Right, I get that part, but she looked like she was out of place and she hadn't been there in forever.
It really just kind of feels like tradition at that point.
Yeah. Right.
But there's a lot of really interesting ideas in that, where as a commentary on religion, what we believe as a religion has kind of grown from these ideas that weren't necessarily intentionally meant to be what they've become, right?
Right.
But that's what people have latched onto and have started worshiping around. So the idea that there would be this thing that you would naturally think it could be a deity type entity is interesting. It's just nothing that really happens in this movie is given any really room to breathe and the interesting ideas that it sort of presents.
Yeah.
It all feels very very uninterested in itself to a degree where I think part of that is studio chipping away at Shatner's idea, but that was probably also Shatner not fully understanding what his own idea was, if that makes any sense.
Right. It's I find myself doing this a lot too, where like I say, I fall down a rabbit hole on YouTube and I watch a bunch of videos that try to help understand a certain thing, and I cannot relay that to somebody else succinctly. It all makes sense to me, but
Yeah.
the moment I start writing about it or talking about it, it all falls apart.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's dealing with. I think he's so deep into what he wanted to tell, he could not write the story to dig himself out of that hole. But so Ken,
Yes.
what give us your we sense some pain in you over this movie. Share that with us.
I'm not going to go as nuts with it as I did about the whales, but so I kind of, as I thought about it more, I watched this on, I think, Tuesday night or Wednesday night, so I've had a few days to kind of think it over. So I kind of agree with Jason. There were moments in the movie that I feel like overall the movie, number one, didn't flesh out a lot of things well enough. The story, what irritated me about it was that it seemed a little bit rushed. There were people in the movie that like showed up, had 2 lines of dialogue, and then they were just kind of background characters at that point, like the hostages. Right. I feel the hostages could have actually contributed a little bit more to this movie as well. And it was interesting because, like I had mentioned before we got on this call, I watched the motion picture for the first time last night just so I could say, yes, I've seen all 6. And the motion picture is like 2.5 hours long, whereas the majority of the rest of the movies are like under or around 2 hours. And I got thinking about it from the standpoint of, could they have taken 5, made it 2.5 hours, and made it a better movie? That I don't know. It could have just been another 35 minutes of, oh God, just finish this. So I won't go to the level that I said I hate the movie. I just think that with the ideas, it had promise. It just never reached what it could have potentially been, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think again, as I'm listening to you and as I'm thinking about the episodic feel of this episode, I actually think it could have made, written the right way, a really good 1-hour episode. It really fits the Trek formula of an episode, right? Where you go down to a planet, you meet this sort of crazy leader of these people. They all seemingly worship him in some way. He seems to have these powers. He needs a starship to find God. Okay, he takes over the Enterprise. They find God. It's not really God. It's this, intergalactic prisoner that's been imprisoned for thousands of years. I mean, that's kind of a cool episode, right? And in an episode, where you're not trying to throw so much budget at it and action and things to make it a movie, you're actually able to talk about some of these concepts, right? It's probably a lot of the concepts that Shatner had in mind that he was trying to convey, but wasn't able to. So it could, I think it could be a passable story. But yeah, when you're trying to make it a movie sort of production, it doesn't feel like it's the right medium for this story, for this Trek story.
It also, I think, had like some of the least amount of actual action of any of the movies as well.
Yeah, in a way, it kind of, people are starting to show their age a little bit. Whereas Star Trek IV doesn't have a great deal of Star Trek IV didn't have a great deal of action, but it's not a movie that the action is told by fistfights or by a whole lot of starships zooming around or whatever.
Yeah, and by action, I don't mean just like ship-to-ship firing phasers and that kind of thing. Because 4, yes, did have that, but in a different way. This one just had basically nothing,
right,
as far as action went.
But I mean, the hostage rescue scene is pretty action packed.
That was pretty good, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I generally loved that scene, but it was it was actiony. But again, like I feel like
Well, I know what your favorite part of that scene was Uhura's fan dance.
oh man, actually
I got so many messages from Jason telling me about how much he loved it, how he took screenshots of it, how he's filing it away for the spank bank and
That was
everything.
actually one of my actual notes though was how cringy that is.
That and her relationship with Scotty, like what's up
That
with
kind of
that?
came out of nowhere.
In this
Yeah,
movie.
way out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Hello, boys. Yeah, I just oof, didn't like that at all.
I thought even though it kind of circled back at the end, and I understand they needed a place to start, I thought the Yellowstone scene at the beginning took way longer than it really needed to.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. That again is the Shatner ego coming through. Like really, fucking Shatner's going to be able to free climb El
Right.
Capitan. Like no
Yeah.
fucking way.
Yeah, no, the reason he
Give me a
falls
goddamn
is 'cause
break.
Spock. Yeah.
But I like that scene, and then the camping scenes that bookend the movie because it does kind of show you this side of these characters and their friendship. That's part of what I like about these characters is getting to see those moments. So I don't hate that, but yeah, the idea of Captain Kirk free climbing El Capitan is ludicrous to say the least.
Well, I did kind of like the part where McCoy is like watching him free climb from his binoculars, and he's like, "You'll have a great time. Enjoy your shore leave. You'll relax." And he's like, "You
I'm
call
a
this
nervous
relaxing? I'm a wreck.
Yeah.
If I'm not careful, I'll end up talking to myself."
Yeah, that's a good McCoy moment.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so there were a couple of other production problems here too.
Oh, can I quickly mention on the Yellowstone scene something that happened like a couple minutes after that when Spock like shoots up in the space boots and is talking to him, and Kirk obviously is going to fall off. When Spock gets him, did you notice that Spock is like completely upside down, which means the space boots should have driven them both into the ground?
Oh yeah, totally. Also,
Chuck's got
you
something
wouldn't.
about the space boots later. I know he's
Yeah.
trying to.
Well,
talk about.
and also you wouldn't fall straight down. You would like bang against the side of the mountain. Kirk
Yeah.
would have been like a fucking bag of blood at that point.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been falling like 6 feet away from the mountain.
Right.
There's also a moment in the camping scene as maybe my favorite Kirk line ever when he says bourbon and beans, an explosive combination.
I was going to say that because I say that to this day. Yeah. In fact,
Well,
I
it was so
probably
weird
said it
that-
when we were down in Kentucky. Or something.
Yeah.
It was so weird to hear Spock go, "Okay, I'll eat your beans."
Okay. So a couple of the other production problems in this that are really, really obvious. I'm a little surprised that you did not really pick up on this, Jason, but ILM was not available.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't putting the dates together, but yeah, they were pretty
But
busy.
that's not even what I'm talking about. You not connecting to the special effects in this movie suck.
Oh, I don't
suck
know.
real bad. Oh, everything looks super bright and flat. Like everything looks 2D and bright, and like when they're trying some different shots, but it was a different production or a different special effects company, and most like a lot of people pointed out, back in '89 that there were bad effects on it. But ILM was not available because 2 weeks before this movie came out, or a week before this movie came out, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade came out. ILM was working on that. The week after this movie came out, Ghostbusters 2, ILM was working on that. 2 weeks after this movie came out, Batman came out, which I don't think ILM worked on it, but doesn't fucking matter.
It's bad.
It was Batman in the summer of '89.
And somebody was doing effects for it.
Somebody was doing something for it, and it was going to lay waste to everything else in that summer, except for Lethal Weapon 2, which came out a few weeks late, like into July. So yeah, I mean, like, I do admit that, or I will concede the idea that coming out on June 9th or whatever, 1989 was a fucking terrible date for Star Trek to come out on, because it was expected after Star Trek 4 for it to be a pretty significant hit, and it underperformed horribly. Like, it was expected to be $100 million movie,
Yeah.
and it like only got like half of that in the States. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
it was like it finished at 2x its budget or something like that, which
Something
isn't
like
great. I mean, that's I mean, it made money, but it definitely was not the thing that the only reason it made money is because of the goodwill of 4, really.
Right.
Um,
Right, and it made a lot of money right up front.
yeah,
And
that's
there was
exactly right. People were like, "Oh shit, yeah, I liked
Yeah.
4. I want to go see this," and then word of mouth got out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made a lot of money right up front. It made a little bit of money the following week in competition with Ghostbusters, but then Batman came out and everything just flatlined. It played
Yeah.
for 10 weeks, which was the lowest or the shortest amount of weeks that a Star Trek movie ever played. At
That's
least
kind
at
of
that time.
That's kind of hard to believe that it played for 10 weeks, especially with the movies that were out around it. A movie like this would play for maybe 3 weeks these days.
Well, and there's a reason why I think it did play that. Nowadays, every town has one multiplex. Back then, every place had 2 multiplexes, so there
Yeah.
was always a couple of extra screens hanging.
Yeah.
So, like in Greenwood, between General Cinema having 7 screens and Lowe's having whatever they had in 1989, 8 or 10 or
9
whatever.
or 10, I think.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, at that point, there was a screen hanging around for it to hang around on.
Yeah.
But then also it would have gone to some second run theaters too. So, I mean, like, it was a crowded summer. That's not the best excuse for this not doing well. The best excuse for this not doing well is it's not a good movie.
No.
But the effects were not great. The production feels both. I mean, it was 3 years after 4. That feels like they waited a long time, but then they also rushed it because they started filming in October of '88. That's like, what, 8 months before release of a major action science fiction movie? I don't feel like that's enough time. And effects heavy movie too.
Yeah, probably not a lot for post in that case.
Right. And then right as they started filming, the Teamsters went on strike.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they had to bring in scabs, which anything they built got fucked up on an almost nightly basis. So, then it was just doomed to begin with.
And there were things that they even, tried to shoot and spent a lot of money on that they couldn't get right. So that's part of, too, where, it's a $33 million budget, but you maybe only see 15 of that on the screen.
Yeah.
Because they had to scrap stuff that just didn't look good enough that they probably spent millions on.
Yeah. And and also Shatner was directed by Paramount to say, you cannot make a movie longer than an hour and 45 minutes. So whatever they could have put in there, I mean, if they would have been able to get 15 more minutes, I don't know if it would have made anything better.
No.
But it certainly was not helped by being time constrained to an hour and 45 minutes, because they're trying to follow up with all the camaraderie and goofiness of 4, except for the movie doesn't really warrant that. By the end of the movie, there's actually a relatively sincere message, but it kind of gets lost in the goofiness and then just the kind of half-assed movie that preceded those final few minutes. Yeah. Who actually wants to try to explain what the fuck is going on in this movie?
I can take a stab at it if no one else wants to.
Well, I'll start at the beginning because it's the stupidest scene in the world. Cybok is traveling this planet, and he's apparently, whatever power he has, he takes people's deepest pain and releases them, so now they want to follow him. And there's a weird scene where he meets the first guy we see him release. Is like a field miner or field farmer. He farms empty holes or something.
Yeah, he's a dirt farmer like Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cybok is traveling across, and he releases this man, whatever his name is, and all of a sudden the guy's like, "You're a Vulcan," and he has a weird face that they stick on for like 3 minutes, and then they go back to Cybok, and he just starts laughing, and they laugh weirdly for like a minute. I'm like, what the hell just happened at the beginning of this movie?
I could not put into words my emotions just in that opening scene, because I knew that this wasn't going to be like a great movie. But after those 5 minutes, I'm just like, oh God, and we still have another hour and 40 minutes of this. This is not going to end well.
Things are going to get wacky. Interesting note about that guy, Lawrence Luckenbill, who plays Cybok. Yep. He is married to Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz's daughter, Lucy Arnaz.
Interesting.
Yeah. His second wife. They had a few children together.
Yeah. Lawrence Luckenbill was mostly a stage performer.
Mm-hmm. One-man shows. That's how Shatner found him.
And Shatner wanted Connery at first, and this guy totally looks like Connery, or he's playing a Connery at that age.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Could you imagine Sean fucking Connery in this movie?
Oh, it would. It would elevate the movie, at least in the watchability factor.
He was doing
probably also elevated the date that he retires from movies too.
Maybe.
Probably, but yeah, he was doing
Indiana Jones 4 or whatever.
There's an interesting note on Wikipedia about the planet, the mythical planet Shakari, was named in honor of Sean Connery. It's like, wow.
Sean Connery.
That's amazing.
Something.
That is something.
Yeah, he's gathering an army of people. Well, I don't want to call it an army because he's somewhat of a pacifist. But he takes, in Paradise City, which I think there's a missed joke in here somewhere when they beam into the area, he takes 3 important people as hostages in order to get his ship.
Yes, it is the planet of galactic peace or some such shit.
Yeah. And Paradise City is like the capital or whatever. Yeah.
Beam me down to a paradise.
And as soon as was she the Romulan ambassador or something?
Yeah,
as soon as she walks into Paradise City, it's just people fighting and stuff like that. So it's like
a human, a Romulan, and a Klingon walk into a bar. Right?
The Romulan is a put out to pasture like military genius. The Romulan is a babe, and the other one is
the Klingon is a put out to pasture. Yeah,
right. And then
he used to be the greatest war captain in the world.
Exactly, and then the human is
David Warner.
Is David Warner? Yeah, he's Tron or Master Control.
In the bar, you got that weird like dancing stripper cat.
Which I think that's a callback to the animated character Maress, the woman that came in to replace Uhura when Nichelle Nichols was like, I don't want to be a part of this no fucking cartoon show anymore, and so they put in a cat lady in her part because they had the one dude with the super tall head and the 3 arms. Eric's, he was awesome. I like those characters.
This place kind of feels like Shatner really liked the bar that McCoy hangs out in 3, and is like, we need to do more of that in Star Trek.
Yep.
Yeah.
Star Wars Cantina moment.
You're right.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, it's the one thing that Star Wars needs to do more of.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Go figure.
Yeah, right.
That's why. All right.
William Shatner needs to make some Star Wars movies.
Quick digression. That's why I like Solo so much.
Exactly.
That stuff. Like, I don't understand the hate on Solo. That movie is fun as hell. It's like all the shit about Star Wars that I really like.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right. The sentient robot uprisings and shit.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you love.
Stuff. Yeah. Totally.
So now we're introduced to. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Keep us on track, Chuck.
Yeah, the on Trek.
On Trek.
Keep us on track, Doug. What?
I'm not sure the order this goes in, but we're introduced to some Vulcans. I forget, Kra, I think is his name. He's like the worst, or not Vulcans, Klingons.
Klingon, yeah.
Claw.
He's
Captain
like
Claw.
He's such a bad Klingon, like he's so terrible. But they have
But
kind of a
dude,
cool.
he does lift, bro. He definitely
He does
lifts.
lift. They have kind of a cool theme song to speak of the movie, which is overall, or the music, which is overall not great. Their theme song sounds like it's from Flash Gordon.
It's from Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Is it really?
It's Jerry Goldsmith.
And isn't that the same one that they use for Next Generation?
Yep.
Yep.
Jerry Goldsmith.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going
All
to
that.
ask about that because when I watched Motion Picture last night, I was like, wait, that's the same opening theme as 5, but it wasn't used in any other movies, and that's also the TNG theme.
Right.
Yes.
So the theme for the Klingons is the TNG theme?
No.
Oh, you mean
It's the,
I don't know what
there's
the
a
Klingon.
specific.
Oh, we're talking about the opening credit theme.
Yeah,
So-
sorry, I was talking about the Klingon theme. It sounds
Right.
like it's something.
It is a specific Klingon theme that Jerry Goldsmith wrote, but it got
Okay.
shortened in the motion picture, and he was able to write a full theme for this movie that then also was used in Next Generation.
Gotcha. It was kind of actually a cool theme, but all the characters on that ship were just terrible.
Well, yeah, a note about that, too, is I think the movie needs that subplot to kind of create a stronger villain, right?
An
Or
actual
some
villain.
tension.
Or
Yeah.
some tension. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But the problem is that it was shoehorned in because
Mhm.
of studio notes, and it wasn't really fully realized. And then, yeah, that's what you get. You get more mess in a mess. So it needs to be there, but it's just not enough to do anything interesting. Yeah.
What you really needed instead of that is to expand on Cybok.
Yeah.
So Cybok does not create a great deal of tension because he is a pacifist. He's not really out to hurt people. In fact, he's actually, and I do like this moment when Kirk fights back and he's like, it doesn't have to be this way. And he's like really, really upset about it. And it's like, that's a really good moment. Please
Or the
expand.
moment
There's
when
no expansion.
when Chekhov is posing as the captain.
Yeah.
And tells them that they're under attack, and Cybok, his reaction to that is really interesting.
He's not prepared.
It's like, what have you done?
Right.
Yeah.
He's not prepared for the reality of his own quest.
Yeah.
right.
And the response to his quest.
Yeah.
So it's so there are some interesting things you could have done there. You could have had instead of the Klingons, more talky scenes that would have meant more and maybe elevated a not great or a bad movie to a not great movie.
Right, some exposition that gives you more feel for where the characters are. There's actually some funny moments in this too, because once the Enterprise is released to go to the planet, which they're not really prepared to do, right? Or is
Not
that
really.
6? No, that's 5. Yeah, they're not
Yeah,
prepared.
because everything is broken on the Enterprise.
Yeah,
They have all kinds of problems in 5 with the Enterprise.
but they go down there. There's a cool moment where not Uhura's dance, but when they get the horses and they go into town, and you can tell Leonard Nimoy is having all sorts of problem riding a horse and stuff.
That is
And then
totally a Shatner thing. He is a super equestrian.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
of course he's going to have people riding horses. I mean, I have a feeling he wasn't going to be in Generations unless
You got to ride a horse.
well, and no, that Patrick Stewart got on a fucking horse. I'm going to be on a horse. If he wants to be on my level, get him on that fucking horse.
That's hilarious.
But no,
But when Spock says "Hold your horse, Captain," cracked me up.
yeah. I mean,
Like,
there's
that
some
was-
there's
this
some
is a good
clever
moment.
right. There are some clever moments there, and like a lot of it is that relationship. Like I love the idea of all of that conversation that trickles throughout the movie, where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are solidifying their friendship. Like, I mean, it's already solidified, but it's like they're finally talking about it to each other.
Well, and
and
Spock seems to be turning into more of himself after
Exactly.
3. He's starting to come around again.
I also like that they call them marshmallows. and not Mark.
Oh, it's hilarious. That scene was funny too. We kind of blew by that, but
Yeah,
when they're
but
singing "Row, row, row your boat" and stuff, it's
right,
funny.
and Spock won't join in, and
Nope, not having
Kirk
it.
is like, whatever, just let's go to bed.
Well, I like later. Yeah, he says, but Captain, life is not a dream.
Yep. Well,
trying to
he has
analyze it. Yeah,
It's so great.
Here's a crazy recall about something else, and Scotty's like, or not Scotty, Bones is like, but you don't know row, row, row your boat.
right.
It's like funny.
Right.
But yes,
yeah.
that relationship stuff is great with them.
Yeah, and it makes for a lot of really good personal scenes that feels like this movie could have ended the series, but instead it was a bad movie that almost ended the series.
Yeah,
Right.
Because like I remember when it came out, it's like, well, the final frontier means something, right? Like it's
Right.
the final, like this is it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Kirk's gonna fall off that mountain or something. And that's it, right?
Right.
That's how we're gonna be leaving the theater, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like, again, it's so many missed opportunities because it's just because I think we all know this, but when faith is introduced into people that don't ever really talk about a friend group, it doesn't go well ever. Ever. Jason knows what I'm talking about.
That's very true.
So, and it is something.
But Jeff, we somehow have to get to the message, though, that maybe what God is, maybe where God is in our hearts.
Oh.
Okay.
We have to make sure that Star Trek teaches us that, because that's so Star Trek.
That's the final frontier, is our heart. I
Oh,
get it.
guys, I get it now. I love this
In
movie.
our heart. It's great.
Jason just sideboxed the whole movie for us.
Yeah, you cracked it.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to rearrange my list of favorites now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we follow you now as your acolytes?
Yes. We have no choice. We've been freed.
As long as somebody Vulcan neck pinches a horse, I'm cool.
Yes. Oh, that was hilarious too.
I also like the fact that they're space horses.
Mhm.
There are space horses on this planet.
Why not?
Why not? Why not?
And I like that Spock Vulcan nerve pinched one of the horses.
Yep.
So yeah, okay. So where are we at in the story?
So the Enterprise is sent out. They think they fool Cybok, but in reality, that whole town of Paradise City has been released by Cybok. So they take Captain Kirk and the crew that was down there into custody, and they have to bring them up to the Enterprise in that pod, right?
The shuttle.
And-
Yeah.
the shuttle. Yeah.
The Galileo. Yep.
So
And
one
this is
thing
when
here,
Croft
Chuck,
finds them. Go ahead.
one thing here too, I think you hit on something, Chuck, when you were asking about this movie before we got on to talk about it. When you asked if all the Cybok Vulcan stuff had been established as Vulcan lore in previous
Right.
movies or episodes or anything, and the answer is just flat out no. And I think that's confusing to start trying to take the Vulcan people and what they believe in and their ritualistic aspects, yes, but their dedication to logic, and then try to introduce this character who has all of the emotions that Vulcans have repressed, and then yet also has this almost supernatural power to show you visions of your pain and release you from it, right?
Right. It almost feels like they should have used a mind meld,
Right.
but that would have made Cybok way more evil
Yes.
than he is.
But
Which
that's
is why I think
because in
they
the
backed
next
off that.
movie, the mind meld is kind of violent.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like rape almost.
Kind of, yeah.
We'll get there to
Well,
six.
quickly on the topic
Better
of
days.
Cybok, I couldn't find any answer to this, but there's never been a reference to Cybok previously in Star Trek, right?
They even make fun of that kind of in the movie where
Oh, you made that up. It's like
you made that up.
yeah,
You
you
don't have
made
a
that
brother.
up.
I don't have a brother. It's
Vulcans don't lie. That's an
have a
established thing.
I
Yeah,
have
it's
half brother. It's like, oh, it's
Right.
so grown. It's like, why did it have to be Spock's brother? It didn't have to be Spock's brother.
well, the only reason why is that's why you wouldn't kill him.
That's why he wouldn't kill him. But come on,
If it was just a Vulcan, he probably would have shot him full of rocks.
this is
Right.
Kirk though, or this is Shatner writing around a plot point that he had to have because he just had to have Spock and McCoy betray him in some way.
Why
And-
did it have to be a Vulcan?
Right. I thought it could have been like a Romulan or something.
Sure.
Why,
That would make
why
way
couldn't it have been
sense.
Kirk? Kirk gets taken over and mind controlled by something and goes.
Well,
on
that shit ain't gonna
Trek.
happen in William Shatner.
But that would have been good. That would have been good, probably.
Well, probably, yeah, but no, that shit ain't gonna happen in.
Well,
Shatner.
yeah, I agree.
He doesn't
Jason.
get to wrestle with himself until the next one, Chuck.
Right, which is hilarious.
It's one of my
But,
favorite fucking things ever in
You're
Star
like
Trek.
fucking fishing.
Damn it, we're talking around this bad movie. We got to power through, guys.
So
Yeah.
somebody had mentioned that they liked this scene where Craw shows up and
Yeah.
they're again in a Bird of Prey. That can this one?
No,
No.
I already know
Okay.
what you're gonna ask. No.
Thank you. But anyway, they
They cannot fire cloaked.
yeah, they need to stay in shielded mode, so they can't use the gravitational pull or whatever the tractor beams to pull in the pod.
Right.
So Takai has to do a manual.
He has to pilot it manually into the shuttle bay. In like the split second that they take the shields down and then back up, so that the Klingon ship can't.
How long would that last? How long would it take to power down the shields?
17 and a half seconds, I think, is what
which
they
is
said.
more than enough for a Klingon Bird of Prey commander to fire.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
they're able to cut that down to just a matter of seconds.
Plan B.
Right.
And I like that scene. I honestly, this is the stretch of the movie that I actually start to have fun.
For like 6 minutes.
Yeah, when sorry.
And then it becomes Star Trek 5 again.
No, it's a good point because Kirk gets on and says we're going to do Plan B,
Right.
and they're like, what is Plan B? And it's like barrier, and it's like, oh, you can't be serious.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is kind of fun. Like you have this, not really a bout of wits, but where Cybok has taken control of the situation, but he doesn't have control of the situation. He's way out of his depth.
He doesn't know really what to do once he has.
So he has to relinquish again more control back to Kirk, so that Kirk can kind of navigate them out of this situation. Because this is way above Cybok's head. But then they get into the shuttle bay, and they're safe. And there's a moment where Spock has the chance to kill Cybok, and he can't because it's his brother, and you have that whole conversation we talked about. And Shatner feels betrayed by Spock. It could have ended all of this right now. But then Cybok gives Spock the opportunity to join him, and he refuses. He decides to be jailed in the brig with McCoy and Kirk.
Yeah.
Which is where you have then kind of the fun Morse code scene.
Yes. Well, also you have the scene where Kirk's trying to break out, and the whole time Spock's like, "That's not going to work.
Yeah.
That's impossible."
Why didn't you warn me?
Like, you wouldn't by chance have had pointed ears. Yeah.
But
I like how Scotty is just kind of in the belly of the Enterprise the entire time, just in his own world.
Scotty's in his element, man.
Yeah, he is. He's fixing the ship.
He's fixing the ship, but he's also, he knows all the nooks and crannies. He knows how to get, essentially to break them out of the brig by exploding the wall behind it.
And into the Jeffries tube where they.
As he said earlier, I know this ship like the back of my hand.
Ball.
Yeah, and then he hits the beam.
Yeah.
Knocks himself out.
That's funny, but way too convenient a story.
Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
like
it's
that.
goofy as all hell.
I
It's
know,
goofy.
So
I
then-
never liked that. But I will say one thing real quick. Back in all of the interviews for the movie when it was coming out, like Arsenio Hall, and I don't know why I said that first, Johnny Carson, David Letterman, when everybody, when like Shatner would go on there to talk about the movie, like the night before it came out or the week it came out or whatever, they always showed, the clip he always brought was the shuttlecraft being piloted into the, and it's like, oh, that's fucking awesome. This movie's gonna be great. And then I saw it, I'm like, oh,
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Ghostbusters 2 is gonna be great. Oh,
They latched onto the 6 minutes that Jason liked in the movie, and
Exactly.
that's all they could sell it on.
pretty
But,
much. Yep.
But after they had that, so this is my least favorite part of the movie. After Scotty bonks his head, and there's a lot of bad parts. in
I
this
almost expected Tweety Bird sounds after that happened.
movie. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we could have had them. It would have been
I'm
just
not
like
sure that
airborne.
that's not there.
It might
Yeah.
be. I might have actually created them in my head when I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this scene where Bones, Kirk, and Spock have to get up this really big shaft, and it's a total callback to the beginning of the movie where
I
Kirk
have
is
lots
climbing the
notes
face
on
of the
this, Mike.
mountain.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. I don't know where you want me to bring in my bad part, but they're getting
No,
up
go
to
ahead,
the
because
middle.
you're at the beginning. Yeah, you're right.
They're going up. Spock disappears at some point.
Yes.
Kirk's like, "Where the hell is Spock?" And then Spock has his fucking boots again. Like, if he could freely, if he could freely roam the ship to get his boots, why are they sneaking around in the first place?
Right.
Like, they could have just walked to where they needed to go. And what happens next with the boots is just ridiculous.
Well,
Like,
it's the Wonka. It's the bubble. It's
it
the
was
Wonka.
totally reminded me of the Wonka Vader
Yeah.
scene.
So,
For sure.
So, okay, a couple things here. First of all, repeating deck levels. That happens. That everybody who picks apart this movie, like they go past level 52 like twice or something like that.
Yep.
It ends at deck 80. You want to know what's something interesting about it? That would make the ship twice as tall as the Next Generation Enterprise, which is twice as big as the Enterprise A.
So they should have like 30 decks or something.
24.
Yeah.
24 to 25 decks is what the Enterprise A would have had.
And there's
The Enterprise D had 42. The original series Enterprise had 24. This is all shit that's easily found on the internet. Did they not? Was Michael Okuda, who always did the scientific, technical spec writing for the movie, was he busy? Was he on the shitter when they wrote the scene? It's like, well, we can't wait. We got to go out there and build that set.
Oh,
Have they never? Has no one ever answered to this in like the annals of?
If they did, they just said it's a fuck up.
Yeah.
Because
It
is.
did
So
seem
it
awful
has-
tall.
There's no way to get around the fact that it's a fuck up.
Yeah. And also,
Unless the deck numbers start at like
like 50. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, okay, assume that the brig is in the very bottom of the secondary hull, where the arboretum is, by the way. That's what those little blue lights are at the bottom of the ship. Okay, so assume that that's deck 1. They would have to have hit a turbo lift that goes straight through the neck, the bottom of the ship, the neck, and up to presumably where that little impulse collector thing is at the top, the little blue thing at the top. But then over here, the bridge is taller.
So they would have just shift.
And the bridge is always deck 1.
Yeah.
So they went backwards for one. Here it is, Ken. He was pointed downwards. They were upside down, and the boots were shooting him down. That's what it was.
There
Never
it
mind,
is.
we figured it out.
Nailed
there we go.
Some people try to say, well, when you see 78, is that like a Jeffries tube in between deck 7 and 8 or something? They try to play the mental gymnastics with it. They can't.
Right.
They can't figure it out. It's a fuck up.
And in this scene, in all its glory, is for nothing. So something that's been set up for 60% of the movie amounts to 0.
Well, you've had this sequence
It's
now.
fake tension.
You've had this sequence now that started with the them on the planet, and Uhura during her dance to distract the people there, right? And that starts the whole invasion of the hostage rescue, and then it ends with this ridiculous climb up the that gets Jeffrey's tube, right? And then you're right, it's for naught because they just get caught again,
Right.
And then Cybok takes them into Kirk's chambers and tries to unlock their minds, and so that sequence up to this point is kind of fun, right? It's the stretch of road I said that I actually really kind of enjoy what's happening, but then it comes to a screeching halt.
Oh yeah.
With this, I mean, it is just like there's nothing left here that is interesting or fun at all.
Well, I would say there are two elements that are interesting if it wasn't couched in a bad overall idea. First of all, the going to the planet and seeing the fake god thing, the evil super creature,
there's something
that's interesting.
Yeah,
there's something there. There is something there with Kirk. Kirk is right. Your pain is part of your collective history, right? And it helps make you stronger, or it destroys you, one or the other. But for him, it makes him stronger. He needs that to be better than that. That's an interesting idea. It's also interesting that after this, they get to God Planet, and at this point, Cybok's like, Kirk, it's your ship. It's back to you. Everything goes back to his control. He's gotten what he wants out of it, and Kirk is also willing. And Cybok even says, it's like, don't say you don't want to know what's down there. And Kirk can't help it. Yeah, I'll go down there. And they kind of share the lead at this point, which is also a little bit of character development for both sides too.
Yeah,
there's something there. The problem is that it's all couched in a stew of shit.
Yeah.
And I have a question, if I can. Go ahead, Jason.
And it's not really it's just not really given like the opportunity to breathe and to explore those ideas. Also, I think that the other thing that's interesting is that the color purple is apparently mesmerizing.
Yeah. I like that they go down to Eden, and it's just that desert that they filmed the episode Arena in.
Yeah.
About that Gorn.
Where's the Gorn?
That's all it is. It's just tinted purple.
Yes.
Right.
It's not that great of a planet. This is not Eden.
It just cracks me up that they're all on the bridge, looking at the video.
Well, they're watching the movie.
Yeah, they're watching the movie, and they're just mesmerized by this purple hue. It's like, really?
So much so
they got
there's
jammed.
not some right, and so much so that they don't. They're so much paying attention to the movie that there is not one person on that bridge who doesn't hear the beeping sound of, oh, by the way, a bird of prey is in the area.
Yeah. Exactly.
Raise your shields, guys. It's there is a little bit of wonder to it because they are supposedly where no man has gone before.
But I think that's also the movie trying to tell the audience, look at this. This is amazing. You should be in awe because all the people on the bridge are in awe. And I'm just like, this isn't that cool. It's just purple, guys.
I'm like, hey, this is where Kirk fought that Gorn. They're just back at that planet.
Purple filter. It's all it is, guys.
Well, for me in that scene as well, like I said at the very beginning, this was a scene that could have had promise. It could have been something different. Like, I was on board when they started going down there, regardless of it being a reused set. But, I was kind of intrigued by who this thing was going to be. And as soon as he said, "You will give me your starship," I'm like, oh, fuck, okay, I'm out. They could have taken that in a completely different direction other than, you're giving me a starship so I can get out of here too.
I like the direction they took it in. I just don't feel like they I want to know more about it. I want to know more. Jeff's trying to raise his hand, but I want to know more about this being. I want to know more about like why.
Yeah,
it's there.
you don't ever find out like exactly what it's supposed to be, why it's there. Like,
All right, Jeff.
Yeah, go, Jeff.
Why does God need a starship?
Yeah.
Nailed it.
I wasn't going to be the one to say it.
Jeff or Chuck, you had a question like 5 minutes ago. Was your
Yes,
question
go
why does
for
God need a starship, or was it something else?
That might
That's
as well be my
everybody's
question now.
That is the question you're going to be asked at the pearly gates.
No, that's the question I'm going to ask God.
It's like
Hey, can you answer this question for me? It's been killing me. Why does God need a starship?
That's the new
If he has an answer,
Kobayashi
that's
Maru test is why does God need a starship? You can answer that, you pass.
Go ahead, Chuck. What was your...
My question was earlier really doesn't matter anymore, but it was more about the history of the characters. Bones' father, is it widely known that he had to basically...
there might have been something about that. That's not something that is... both that and Spock's father being kind of cold to him. I don't think either one of those things truly existed in any like canon stuff before,
Right.
but it's not questioned. I mean, actually, that stuff kind of makes sense. Like, of course, a doctor would have to do what's right or
Right.
what,
I thought that was a cool scene in a bad movie. Like,
exactly.
In context, it was bad, but it was a cool idea.
Yes, because it does give Kirk the ability to say, Bones, that this is all, shenanigans. You
Right.
know, you can't magically take away somebody's pain. You're a doctor.
And even though their pain was somewhat taken away, they both chose Kirk, which I thought was cool, too.
Yes.
Which is where I think you have the real. That was the thing that they fought for with the script. Those two actors, DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy, they would not do the movie as it was written, where they would turn against Kirk.
Yeah,
They're
even
like,
at
nope, that's not true to our characters.
Our best, we would stick with Kirk.
Right.
Well, and also it does bring up another interesting idea, which is it's okay to come to terms with your pain and not really change who you are.
Right.
It's okay to not feel the pain of losing somebody or something. That doesn't change who you are.
Right.
Hell, it's okay to be spiritual and to have beliefs and things and still be who you are. Yeah, I mean.
Oh, because God knows that Bones is probably some sort of Southern Baptist or something.
Right.
He's racist as fuck in the series. So, well, at least towards Vulcans.
Yeah. But the rest of the crew, they're almost like a bunch of born-again Christians who are going to their family's house and saying, guess what I've learned?
Right.
Yeah,
now it's your turn. Yeah, exactly. You need to feel what I feel.
Well, you know what Jason and I would do on our Starship Enterprise?
Shoot him into space.
Yeah. And we have. Anyway. But,
So the end of this movie gets really confusing because the bird of prey shows up and it attacks the Enterprise, but then they're trying to beam up cock. Wow.
Yeah.
Beam up this dude.
Yeah, I was trying to say Scotty and Spock at the same time. Scotty is trying to beam up Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Right.
Meanwhile, Cymock has essentially sacrificed himself so that they can get away.
He realizes that the whole thing he ever searched for
was a lie.
Was a lie, at least not in a physical sense, or at least it was a lie in a physical sense. And he realizes, and this I think is actually really good, he realizes the danger he's put everybody in, so he's going to be the one who fixes it.
Yeah,
and I like that, actually. Because, it shows that he is not a killer.
He's not a bad
person. He's
misguided.
Exactly.
And he's so misguided, he will misguide others in what he is.
He will hurt people if he's not careful.
Yeah. So then it gets real crazy muddled here for me. After he sacrifices himself away, Scotty's only able to beam 2 people up. Kirk
And
doesn't
he
give
immediately says, "Beam up Spock and
beam up
McCoy."
Spock and McCoy, which is cool, and even starts to protest as he's being beamed up.
Right. And Kirk starts rolling up his sleeve.
Damn minute, I think is
Yeah.
what he says.
Yeah, Kirk begins to roll up his sleeves. It's like, I'm going to punch God in the fucking face.
Yep.
Yeah. But then all of a sudden, the bird of prey was attacking the Enterprise, but now the bird of prey is down on the planet and it laser blasts God, fake God, and then Kirk gets beamed to the bird of prey, right?
Yes.
And on the bird of
to
prey,
back it up a little bit, when the bird of prey attacks, the one Klingon that was the hostage says, "I'm in a higher level of him. Let me talk to him."
yeah,
Then it goes back to the planet. Then Kirk gets beamed up.
yeah.
And then there was that weird scene of like, you have something to say to Captain Kirk, and the Klingon's like, "I apologize." Like,
Yeah, it's so weird.
But the attack on your ship was not authorized by my country. Technically, it was, sir, because in Star Trek IV, that one guy said there will be no peace as long as Kirk shall live.
Right.
So technically, you were aces to fire upon the Enterprise.
yeah, but when the Klingons were there in the very beginning, he was all of the mind frame like, "Oh, if I can get Kirk, I will be the greatest ruler." And then you hear nothing about the Klingons until the very end.
Don't you kind of get the sense that bird of prey captains are really their mission is to just fuck shit up? Like
Yes.
they don't have any real like tactical commands.
Well, you got to fly around the Katinga class to get any actual again, we got one movie to go. What do we have in that? We have the presidential guy on the actual cruiser.
Yeah.
And you have crazy general man in the bird of prey.
Right. Exactly.
So
anyway, but yeah, the day has been saved, and then it's shore leave again.
Well, not in front of the Klingons.
Oh
Okay.
God.
Oh yeah.
The no homo in front of the Klingons.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Kirk reveals that the guy who blew up God was Spock, and he turns around in the bird of prey captain's chair, and Kirk is gonna hug him, and Spock is like, "Please no."
Wasn't it like, "Please, way. Captain, not in front of the Klingons"?
Yes. And
are we done yet?
Yeah.
PDAs, bro.
No homo. So then they go back to the Enterprise where everybody's going to have a drink in the 10 forward, or the version of 10 forward that's on the Enterprise A. And George Takei is really into that Klingon lady, as is Chekhov. They're just following her around, looking at her muscles.
Yeah.
Woo!
And Scotty gives the old fat Klingon some scotch whiskey. That's kind of fun because you get to see 2 old fat guys drinking scotch whiskey. This movie sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. Even one of the lines in this movie that was supposed to have weight sucks. Because I think it's Cybok that says it. He says, "The people of your world once believed the Earth was flat," and I'm like, "Yeah, people still do think that."
Speaking of rabbit holes, I watched a nice 45-minute video debunking all those asshole videos on YouTube.
No, that sounds like a good use of time.
It was actually quite funny. The guy who made the video is quite funny.
Yeah.
British guy. Anyway, yes, it's there are a lot of things that are meant to carry weight, but the one thing that carries the most weight is bourbon and beans, an explosive combination.
Yes.
That movie gave us that line.
It does. And what does God need with a starship?
Yeah.
By the way, when they get blasted, they have burn holes through both sides.
Both sides of their body. Yeah.
They should be dead?
Yeah.
Question mark?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
life is a dream, and that's fine. Row, row.
Merrily.
Should we end this episode with a harmonious rendition of Row Row Your Boat?
No.
No. Although I do
I'm
like
down.
that Spock has his little Vulcan harp from the old TV show. That was the 3rd season episode, and that episode, as goofy and fucked as that was, is better in this movie. Space hippies. Guys,
Guys.
you know what? At least we're going to go out with some awesome.
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
Next week,
because
if you
6
know
is
math,
quite good.
is Star Trek 6.
6 is bourbons and beans, man.
It's an explosive combination.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I remember seeing the movie, and you know, the first time you see it, or Star Trek 5, the first time I saw it, it's like you kind of like the movie, right? Like everybody kind of liked Star Wars Episode 1 the first time they saw it,
Right.
but you had that question in the back of your head, like, should I like this?
Yeah.
Well, let me go see it again.
You get caught up, sort of. Yeah. In your fandom, you know?
Yes, and after seeing it again, I was like, man, 2, 3, and 4 are way better than this. Way better. I mean, like, I do like that they try to tag this on to that trilogy because, you know, Scotty's like bitching that, like, you know, oh, let's see what she's got. Oh, that's what he says, and now it's all fucked. You know, the Enterprise is broken down. But it kind of also ruins the niceness of the end of 4. you know? But anyway, but like, yeah, I mean, I was so starved to see because also it's like Next Generation was back. I like Next Generation, but the original guys were my jam, you know?
Yeah,
so it's like,
me too.
I wanted to hold on to them for as long as I could. And 2, 3, and 4, even though I always secretly had this frustration with 3 because they blew up my favorite lady ship of all time. But they, but like they were still so much better than that. And like the feeling you had after each one of those movies were so wonderful, you know. And then this, it's like, oh, I hope this isn't the last one.
Yeah.
Right.
That was
And then the summer of '91, you start seeing the teaser trailer of all the little old shots of the Star Trek series. And it's like, oh, fuck yeah, we get one more. But, yeah. Oh, I remember one thing I was going to say.
Well, one and a half if you want to count Generations.
But I don't. I
I
only
had such
count.
high hopes for Generations.
I should have known better. I should have known better about Generations when going into it. But anyway, a couple of things I meant to touch upon. If Kirk was shown his pain, he would have seen David.
Oh, sure.
But the guy who played David probably wouldn't have been able to do it. He had AIDS. He died of it. I mean, he died of AIDS and was probably quite sick at the time because he died in '89. So I mean,
you could have reused footage, but yeah.
Could have, but it might have come off real janky.
But Kirk, interestingly enough, ends up dealing with that. Kirk ends up dealing with that pain pretty heavily in 6, so he does get confronted with it.
Sure.
Like Sybok would have confronted him with it, but at a different time.
Yeah. Also, I do like Jerry Goldsmith's score in this. It does sound a lot like the motion picture because he just took it and adapted it into the movie. However, I think this score in particular is later adapted for First Contact because there are a lot of music in First Contact that he used that sound a lot like some of the non-themes of this movie. So, anyway, that's all I had.
I have nothing more to say.
Star Trek 6 is better.
Yep.
I barely took any notes for Star Trek 6.
Really?
In fact, so yeah, look forward to that. Look forward to me just winging it because I've seen dental pain.
I've probably seen 6 most of any of them, so yeah, I didn't take any notes because I'm pretty good to go on that one.
6 and 2 are the ones I've seen the most for sure.
Yeah. So Wednesdays, Jason, what happens?
Wednesdays, new episodes of Film Seizure. You can check us out on filmseizure.com. You can also listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, TuneIn, some other
Stitcher,
various places.
Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts.
Jeff, what happens on Mondays?
Monster Mondays.
Yes, indeed. Listen to Jeff talk about 3 things he likes about a monster movie. Very
Exactly.
cool.
Let's see what's coming up this week here. Let's see here. The next Monday is Island of Lost Souls.
Oh, nice. That's a gooder.
We are not, or are we not men?
And then what happens on Saturdays these days?
00 Saturdays. This little essay that I have about either a Bond movie or a Bond music, Bond theme song or whatever. Yeah.
And then on Fridays, check Jeff out over at bmovieenema.com, where he writes funny stuffs about a generally bad movie.
But I got a great one this week. This week is Vice Academy. That movie is so much fun.
That is
so much fun. So yeah, I appreciate people checking that out. If I haven't crossed it yet, I have been getting pretty close to 500 likes on the Facebook page for B Movie Enema. That's been very humbling.
Killing it.
So then, yes, tune in next week for the end of our Trekation as we voyage to the undiscovered country that is Star Trek VI.
I actually, to this day, use the term undiscovered country in various circumstances when I talk about changes that are coming in the future or something. I've been known to say that in
that and bourbon and beans is a explosive combination.
I say that
in the undiscovered country.
Exactly. I say that every meeting I have at work. Yes. That's how I sign off. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So go over to Facebook and Twitter. Find us at Film Seizure. Just follow us over there and stuff. Cool. It'll be good. All right. So until next week when we wrap up Trekation and we bring our very own Enterprise back for decommissioning. And for an extended shore leave, which will only last like 6 days because we'll have another episode the week after. I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.